Welcome back to Robbing Minds. We're now joined by the Senior Special Assistant to the Nigerian President on Digital Strategy, Engagement and Communications, Otega Ogra, who's joining us from our Abuja studio. Otega, welcome to Robbing Minds.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you for honoring our invitation. Now, when it comes to communication, there seems to be a disconnect with the level of work that this administration under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing and the level of engagement with Nigerians. So recently, President Tinubu was telling the ministers to go and inform Nigerians about the work they are doing. Let Nigerians feel their impact. In your opinion, what can be done to improve the communication between this administration and the Nigerian populace?
So the president's instruction to the ministers was very, very instructive and timely. And I said it for a couple of reasons. One was the fact that we are speaking, but sometimes it's pretty difficult for, the information to distill down to the regular people. And why is it so? You have the media, environment. It's highly saturated now. Unlike before where you had a 24-hour news cycle, now the news cycle is every second. And we believe that a lot of the ministers, we can see the data at the back end. We can see the work they're doing. The president sees it. It gets weekly reports from almost all the ministers, and it follows through on them. Why are the Nigerian people not hearing that? And considering a situation where you have both the Ministry of Communications, the Ministry of Information, the presidential media team, and others, within the ministries, departments, and agencies, you would expect that a lot more people will hear. But don't also forget, coming into office in May 2023, there was a lot of bad blood and negativity in the air. You had quite a lot of opposition who, rather than focus, a new president has been put in place, rather than us focusing on moving the nation forward. It was all about, casting aspersion, living in a space of negativity, which Nigeria didn't need at that point in time. But as you can see, as I can see, we are gradually turning the tide. More energy has been put into communicating properly. More energy has been put into ensuring that, information gets down to the people. We're also supporting the ministers, heads of departments, heads of agencies to be able to speak properly, to the people and get their messaging out there.
Otega, I'm glad to see you're a young person who has experience in communications, in marketing, coming from the private sector. In your opinion, are you able to really break down this messaging to the different segments within the Nigerian population? For example, you have the people that are used to getting their information from radio, maybe in the local language. Then you have young people who are on Twitter, that perhaps is a Twitter space that you'll be able to engage them on. How are you able to engage the different segments of people across Nigeria? And from your experience working with the presidency, what is this president doing to ensure that everybody is carried along and not just the ministers communicating what they're doing?
Okay, as a young person in communications in the late 2000s, one of the first things I learned was that the quality of information you push out there is as important as, the timeliness or the volume of that information you're putting out. The quality and the fidelity of that information is very important. In these days of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, and all that, you see, you have to be very careful to ensure that the information is tweaked for each platform that you want to push it on. The information gets to the right people at the right time, and that there is little room for, miscommunication on the part of government. Thankfully, you talked about radio. I would put it to you that the government still has one of the largest radio networks in Nigeria. FRCN, and the Voice of Nigeria are two platforms that, reach the most Nigerians. They're the most visible platforms. Rural areas, urban areas, the semi-urban areas, as well as syndicated programs or other platforms. And they are doing a lot in that.
Yes, Otega, I hear you clearly, but there seems to
would you give me a second, please? You asked a question, and I think it's important I answer that first. So what we're saying is, for instance, you mentioned digital. I got into government as head of digital for the presidency. And what we realize is, so far before now, everyone has tried to use their personal, pages, their personal platforms to push government business. Where does that leave us in trying to, determine what is right, what is wrong, what is true, and what is fake? So what we did in the first few months, especially on the digital space, was consolidate all forms of information onto platforms that are easily recognizable, platforms that people can always, say, oh, if they see some news somewhere, where can they verify it? Remember I said fidelity of information and the quality of information is as important. I'm listening. Go ahead.
I hear you loud and clear, and it's good to see that information is coming directly from the official handles. But there's that sense that the disconnect still exists, especially with hearing directly from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It seems like the only time we get to hear him is in response to maybe there's a protest going on or on national days. Do we have to wait for special days or for protests to happen before we hear directly that, like right now, he's out of the country. So we still have to rely on what the minister is saying, what you are saying, what comes out of the Twitter handle. But at this point, Nigerians want to feel their president. They want to hear directly from their president. What needs to be done so that we can really understand that our president is listening to us, he's feeling.
I think you can do something before we end this conversation. Yes, I agree with you. And I think you can do something before this interview is over. Have the back office staff check how many times the president has spoken directly to Nigerians. That's quite a number, considering they only got into office May 2023. That being said, the president is the president of all Nigerians. He has aides who are being paid, who have been employed to do the job of speaking. And the president comes out when it's very important for him to speak. For instance, when we're doing the food industry interventions, the president came out to speak. There was no protest then. There was nothing going on there. And he's also used the platform of his address to Nigerians, be it the State of the Nation address, the Independence Day addresses, and other addresses like that to connect directly. Now, as the media, and this is where collective responsibility comes into place, as the media taking their time to actually go back into what the president has said and hand it over to his, to people like us who are his aides and his ministers and heads of departments to follow through on those things that the president has said that he was going to do, or the president has announced that he was going to do in his, in his speeches. Very few have done that. Rather, what we have seen more often than not has been, a barrage of sometimes negative reportage, not based in, additional research and facts. We want to work together with the media. The media is the fourth estate of the realm. We can't be here without the support of the media. Yeah. Neither can the Nigerian people get good information or the perfect kind of information that they need to make informed decisions without the media. So there's a collective responsibility here. It's one thing for the president to speak, it's another thing for the ministers to speak, it's another thing for his aides to speak, and it's another thing entirely for the media to ensure that they do their own part in ensuring that the people, the Nigerian people, who are our primary audiences, can hear and make informed decisions as to their governments and how the government is faring or performing.
Now, I want to move on to something that's affecting everybody in Nigeria. There's a virus going round, and it's not COVID-19, it's hunger. We've gone from being able to afford 3 square meals to going to 1 not, and some parents are even having to go on compulsory fasting just so their kids can eat. Now, I know the president in his address has touched on some mid to long-term solutions like introducing mechanized farming, importing machinery from abroad, even making sure that inputs are available. But in the short term, what can be done to address the food insecurity, the rising food inflation? I'm not talking about when this machinery gets here or at the end of a planting season. I'm talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about next week and next month. What is the president doing to address this food insecurity?
Thank you for asking this question. as much as I empathize with the Nigerian people, given the fact that, yes, for the first 3 quarters of this government coming in, yes, there was inflation, and the inflation was tied to, increased energy prices, which led to increased cost of food items and everything. But as it's August, the president put in place some interventions to try to drive down that food inflation. By the second quarter of this year, food inflation has started to go down. I have a couple of young people who work in different markets across, Nigeria, who we get, weekly intelligence, data intelligence from as to the cost of key food items across different markets across the country. And I can say the data does not lie. The data is there. Food prices are actually coming down across board. I think you should allow me answer your question properly, please.
Ortega, I'll have to interject.
I'm going to answer.
Okay. I'll have to interject because I go to the market, so I can give you full information.
I also go to the markets. I cook my own food.
The price of rice, the bag of rice is over 100,000. So I'm not sure where you're getting those prices from that you're saying food inflation is on the low. It has increased, and that's also because you can't take away the effect of
I hear you, but I respectfully disagree. I wonder whether you're buying your rice from one of those supermarkets.
I actually go to Lagos Fresh Food.
Hold on 1 second.
So that's a government initiative.
The FCCPC has said are doing price gouging, which is overtly increasing the price of foodstuff, to cheat the Nigerian people. The price of rice, as at 2 months ago, had gone up to about 80-something thousand naira, has come down currently to 72 to 75,000 naira, and we expect that to continue to go down at the moment. Pending when you say the commodities that have been imported by the federal government under its latest food security interventions start to take effect. But going back to your previous question, I think I need to answer that properly, and I would appreciate if you give me the opportunity to speak directly to you and the Nigerian people. Food is directly tied, to 2 different things. One, local issues, global issues. On the global issue, you have things like, energy security, global supply chain issues. Across the world, at the moment, as we speak, the world is yet to recover fully from the impacts of COVID-19. COVID-19 happens, there were global supply chain issues. Post that, you now have wars in certain places like, Russia, Ukraine, and currently in the Middle East. What that has done is a lot of foodstuff are imported from some of these regions with increased, impact on the ability to export foods to some of these countries, especially to Africa. You've seen, food prices go up across the world. Go anywhere, check the numbers, check, historical data, and you can confirm or fact check me if I'm wrong. Secondly, you also need to realize on the local front, before I even go to local front, on the international global fronts, food is also tied in some way to energy security, to energy security and energy access. And why do I say that? If the global price of, key energy components like coal, PMS, which we use in Nigeria, or heavy fuels like LPFO and the rest go up, it automatically affects the food industry. And why does it affect that? Because petroleum products are used to produce, your tractors, they used to run your tractors, they used to produce things like fertilizers, they used to run things like refrigeration systems. The entire value chain is tied to energy. For as long as there's a global energy imbalance, we would expect that some of these things will continue to happen. However, is the government going to sit behind and say, because things are not working well globally, we cannot mitigate the impact of that on the Nigerian people? That is the question. Now bringing us to the local front, what are the issues? On the local front, we all know what the issues are. I mean, it's been rehashed by experts over and over and over again. But what has the government done? The government is responding, to the food crisis in different ways. One, the government has introduced a lot of duty and waivers and everything for food. The government is also ensuring the states and other.
Ortega,
we'll come to that. I think, please, it's very important that you let me speak. You know, the government is doing that. Domestic production is being supported from provisions of inputs, provision of agricultural extension services, provision of things
I
like,
already said
you know,
that the government was doing some of these things when I asked the question. I said, yes, the government
I'm coming
is
because
doing these things.
it's
But
important that people know. You know
on
this.
the issues. I want us to land on the issues because you can't talk about
We
food
will land on the
security
issues
without addressing the banditry, without addressing the herdsmen farmers clash. Because no matter what the government does in providing subsidized
You're actually
inputs,
making my points for me because I was talking about the local
farmers
issues
won't go
and
to the
situating them and
farm.
tying them directly to
So what is the
interventions.
government doing to
First and
address
foremost,
insecurity
local
in the Middle
production.
Belt?
Before we get to insecurity, production, like I said, a lot of things. I've spoken about the global parts. The local parts, what is involved in ensuring that there's food security in Nigeria. On the production part of things, I've told you, government is providing inputs, providing
Made that
equipment,
point, but
providing agricultural extension services,
in the short term,
building roads,
what is
rural
being done
access
in
roads
the
for
short
food.
term?
On the security side, let me go to the security side. Yes, because at the end of the day, these things are not magic wands. You don't wave, a broomstick and things automatically change. There is a process to change, no matter how, stressful or painful it might be. On the security side, go look at the numbers. How many attacks have you seen on Nigerian soil from bandits, from terrorists, from insurgents in the past 1 year? That number is greatly reduced. Aside that, you can see the number of insurgents, terrorists, and kidnappers and bandits who have either been neutralized or arrested by the Nigerian armed forces. Kudos to them, our brave men and women on the field who are making things safer for our farmers to return back to their farms and people to go back their daily lives. So that is being taken care of because the president gave a marching order to the security agencies, their chiefs, and the people on the field. Go in there and make Nigeria. Internal security is a big thing for the president, make Nigeria safe. And we can see it in the numbers. We can see it in improved yields, improved agricultural yields from the last farming season. We can see it in improved number of internally displaced people going back to their farmlands, going back to their homes. That is not to say that there are no issues.
We are seeing increased prices. Like, this is great data, but for the average person on the street going to the market, I've gone to the market recently. I've seen how something I bought for, say, spaghetti now for 700, 800 has become 1,200. I've seen how the price of gari, beans have all gone up. And kudos to some state governments like Lagos, where they have an intervention of 25%. If the prices were not going higher, they probably wouldn't have put that 25% discount in selected markets. So the data shows that food prices have gone up. But my question is, in the short term, before we have the increased yield, before we do the mechanized farming, before we see the dividends of more people going back to the farm, what is the government doing to ensure that the Nigerian person can afford 3 meals in the short term?
So aside what I've said, the federal government, led by President Tinubu, is taking a leading role in ensuring that we provide all farmers' needs and all the value chain needs, not just farmers, to ensure that food gets to people. Other than that, the government is also, co-opting and speaking to other subnationals, the state governments, the local governments, to follow our lead and use their increased revenues, from the federation accounts to put it into, generating or creating more opportunities for farmers to be able to plant, to boost the food production process as a whole. Again, this thing is a process. And this show is called Robbing Minds. I believe we're here to rob minds. I believe I'm also here to take your reports back to the government. But, in doing so, we must not lose sight of the facts that things are changing for good. We must not lose sight of the fact that whilst a lot of people are doing a lot of things to put things in perspective, to ensure that things change, to ensure that the prices of food come down, to ensure that the average man on the streets can go somewhere and get a bag of rice for 40,000. There are also people amongst us, Nigerians like you and I, who are taking opportunity of that to hoard, to increase prices arbitrarily
there's something that
and deny regular Nigerians foodstuff that they need. You cannot. Let me give you two clear examples.
I want you to tie something because sorry, Ortega, I have to interject here.
Exactly. The first example I want to give you is rice. The government started a project.
Ortega, I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, and there's something that's very important that I'd like us to address because it affects food security, and that's the rising cost of petrol because people are still going to transport goods and services. So for example, last month we were buying petrol at what, 800 naira per liter here in Lagos, in other places 900 naira, and then within what, a week, 2 weeks, we still have the long queues, and now we're buying petrol in Abuja where you are, it's over 1,000 naira, and there's no way that that cost is not going to be transferred to the consumer. So there is a relationship between the rising cost of petrol, and Nigerians really just want some clarity. What is the solution to the endless fuel queues? Is it the removal of subsidy? Is it the deregulation of the sector? Is it even local refining, which we're now seeing in Nigeria? But what needs to happen for those prices to come down? Or should we just expect that market forces will determine it? And maybe by next month, we're spending as much as 2,000 naira per liter for petrol. We just need some clarity around these rising costs and even the availability of this product. If we are indeed refining locally, surely supply shouldn't be an issue.
You see, yes, for Mr. President and his team, we believe Nigeria is a gas country, and there's a reason why I say so. The petroleum industry has been fully deregulated since 2022. 2020. And that also saw the unbundling of NNPC, now a commercial entity, no longer a regulator, and, creating a willing buyer, willing seller, sort of situation in the market. But we looked at this, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his team looked at this upon coming in and came up with a strategy. Why do we want to keep using, a fuel energy source that is expensive, but expensive to refine, expensive to transport, expensive to sell, when in the same country that has that same crude oil, we have more gas than is necessary for our transportation needs, for our cooking needs, for our energy needs. And the president said, see, we are going to put all our efforts into ensuring that Nigerians can get an energy source that is both cheap, accessible, and something that is also safer for them to use. Enter CNG. We started the presidential CNG initiative. What has the presidential CNG initiative done? It has ensured that people, and the price differential is very huge, to break it down to listeners out there.
For how many people can access this
CNG,
gas?
1 second, please. You need to allow me to actually speak. It's very important. You've asked very important questions.
Because
we need to give Nigerian people the opportunity to listen to their government speak.
Yes, but Nigerians don't have cars.
But you are not allowing the Nigerian people listen to this.
Generators powered by gas. Unfortunately, that's still a mid to long term solution.
So can I ask you a question, please? Would you humor me and let me ask you a question? Is this question you've asked me now, is this a Nigerian people problem, or is this, 1 second, please, let me ask my question. Now I want to ask you this question. Is it a Nigerian people question, or it's a middle class problem? The average Nigerian, 70% of Nigerians use public transportation. What has the government done for that? The government has said all public transportation, buses, taxis, everything in Nigeria are converting for free. You're converting your cars to CNG for free.
We have Keke
Yes, downforce, go and check it. All of them are being converted for free.
They are not yet converted. What will happen between now and the time of conversion? Because the average Nigerian in these urban areas.
Why? You can go into any conversion center across Nigeria. I can see that there's a knowledge gap here, but I want to tell you again and tell the Nigerian people in this limited time remaining, there are conversion centers across Nigeria. Everyone who has a commercial vehicle through either an NURTW or so, even to Uber drivers and co, can go there and get their vehicles converted immediately at no cost. For private vehicles, you have to pay a cost, and the government is even coming up with something now to ensure that you can convert now, pay later to CNG. The problem, like I said when we're talking about food, is that you have Nigerians, public transport owners who have benefited from this, who have converted their vehicles, converted their kekes, converted their taxis, but who have yet to pass on this cost savings to Nigerians. You are making cost savings of about 70 to 80% on your fuel usage. You know, 1 tank of fuel, you know, of CNG is almost the same as 6 tanks of fuel. In terms of
Ortega, I don't know if you have converted.
Yet,
I don't know if
you're
you've
not seeing
converted
people
your
pass this
car.
down to the people.
I don't know if you have converted
my car, and I use a car that runs on CNG.
And then
I use a car that
are running
runs on CNG. I
businesses
spend between
using
12 to
generators.
15,000 naira to fill up my tank.
So
again, the government is taking, you see.
You've educated us on the need to convert.
Go ahead.
And we hear you loud and clear, but it's still going to take time. And right now we're dealing with the effects.
It's not going to take time. It's already happening.
We're dealing with the effects of rising food costs.
It is here
rising transportation costs.
Go to pci.gov.ng and see how you can convert your car. See how you can get, you know, where your filling stations are. It's there. It's here and now. It's not a tomorrow thing. You know, we've removed, in addition to removing all the waivers and all the GCs on CNG products, now the government has extended it to even cooking gas, LPG, electric vehicles.
Otega, we're running out of time.
Without any waivers.
Yes, Otega,
we are running out of time, but it's important to see it facts.
Yes, thank you. And we hope that we'll have more engagement like this where you're breaking it down, you're letting us know what this government is doing.
I would also ask one question from the media. And that is, please go out there and verify and come fact check the government as to whether the CNG project has started, whether a lot of people have taken advantage of it, and whether, you know, what I'm saying here is what it is. That would be the biggest form of advertising you can do for the Nigerian people, to let them know that they do not need to rely on PMS, petrol. They can easily convert their generators or cars.
Thank you very much. We're sadly out of time. Thank you for your contributions on Robbing Minds. We're going to go on a quick break, and we hope that you'll come back again where we have more time to discuss many pertinent issues affecting the Nigerian people. Thank you.